Hello friends, I am Shubhangi Rohatgi, PGT Bio, KV number 1 AFS Hindon, and I welcome you to the session number 1 on the class on chapter 8 Human Health and Diseases. Health is a topic which is of concern to everybody, not necessarily only biology students, and since time immemorial people have been trying to find out answers related to the questions on health. There were great thinkers like Hippocrates who have done a lot of work in this field. Earlier, it was believed that health is a result of a balance between certain body fluids, that is the humors. It was thought that there are 4 different humors, the yellow bile, black bile, phlegm and the blood. Each of these represent a particular element of the nature. And it was believed that it is the balance between these 4 humors or the body fluids that results in good health. And if there is any kind of imbalance between these body fluids, it will result in bad health. For example, it was thought that persons with black bile will have hot personalities and would have fevers. Later, with advents in the science, particularly in the field of biology, many different discoveries were made and new beliefs were formed. William Harvey discovered blood circulation, here is his pic, and he demonstrated that normal body temperatures are present in persons with black bile. So, good humored hypothesis of health was thus discarded. Now, biology has progressed a lot and we have come to know much about health. It is now known that mind affects health. How? Well, our brain exerts control on our immune system through the neural system and the endocrine system, and it is this immune system that guards our health. So, we can safely say that our mind affects our health. After knowing so much about health, can we now describe or define what is health? Well, according to the World Health Organization WHO, it has been stated that health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of any disease or infirmity. Now, please pay attention on the words here. It very clearly says that health is a state of complete, total physical, mental and social well-being, not only the absence of any disease. Why these words have been incorporated in this definition? Well, we just discussed that our mind affects our health, and about social aspect, well, we know that human beings are social animals. We cannot live in isolation. Anybody who is healthy displays wellness in all these aspects. Think about any person who is habitual of say stealing or picks up fights very easily, does not gel along with people regularly and or obsessed with thoughts of sex all the time. He may or may not have other infirmities or symptoms of so called diseases, but yet would we call him fit or healthy? No, because for being healthy means to be completely physical, mental and socially well-being and not only be free from any infirmity. Moving ahead, why is this health, being healthy, so important? Well, if you are healthy, it will lead to more efficiency at work, more productivity, leading to the prosperity and increased longevity. It also leads to reduction in infant and maternal mortality. For any government, development of a healthy society is very important, and all the governments have the health and development of healthy society in their topmost priority agendas, because a healthy nation only can be a happy and prosperous nation. Now that we know that what is the importance of being healthy, let us discuss the factors that affect the health. You must have some idea about the factors that affect health. Let us discuss them and try to enumerate them. The first and foremost factor that comes to mind is our lifestyle. When we talk about lifestyle, we include the food and water that we consume, exercise that we do or don't do, and our habits. Habits like washing hands before taking food, not washing them, sleeping in late regularly, or having a love for junk food. All these habits are going to affect our health. The second factor that affects our health is the infections. Infections impair our health very badly. And thirdly, our genetic composition. Our genetic makeup decides whether or not we are going to fall sick easily, whether we are susceptible or more resistant towards different kinds of genes, whether we can escape the infection quickly or not. This all is determined by our genetic composition. Now, have a look at the factors that affect health, let us see how can we achieve good health. Obviously, if we know the factors, we can try to control the factors to achieve the good health. Let us begin with the lifestyle. In lifestyle, we studied about the food and the water we consume. So, obviously, if we take balanced diet, if we take clean drinking water in adequate amounts, we can pave way for a good health. Similarly, doing regular physical exercises, aerobic exercises or yoga can impart good health. And talking about the habits of maintaining proper personal and social hygiene, and also having proper awareness about the diseases and the ways to prevent it can cause a lot of difference and help us to achieve good health. Talking about infections, how can we control the infections? How can we prevent them? Well, the first and foremost thing is to maintain good personal and social hygiene. And the second thing is to have proper vaccination. Vaccination does a lot to prevent many different diseases. Then we should also ensure that we dispose of our waste properly and control the growth of vectors which spread the infectious pathogens. Government has been undertaking many programs and many schemes are being run in order to prevent infection amongst us, like Pulse Polio program, Nirmal Bharat, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. All these schemes are aimed to increase awareness and lead towards a healthy society. But the most important thing that we can do is to maintain proper personal and social hygiene to stay away from infections. The last factor that we studied was genetic composition. Well, there are genetic disorders which may affect a person, and if there is knowledge about these disorders, they can be treated in the embryonic stages. They can be checked during the embryonic stages through different therapies like gene therapy. Now, having decided what is health, how health is important for us, let us try to define disease. What is a disease? Well, a disease can be defined as any condition that impairs the normal functioning of the body. It may affect one or many organs or systems of the body, and a disease is always characterized by various signs and symptoms. Let us discuss the types of diseases. Diseases can be broadly classified as infectious or non-infectious. Infectious, as the name suggests, are those diseases which can be transmitted from one person to another, while the non-infectious diseases are those which cannot be transmitted. These are deficiency diseases, genetic disorders or physiological disorders. Deficiency diseases arise because of deficiency of any nutrient in our food, like you have studied about night blindness, beriberi, scurvy, rickets. All of these are deficiency diseases. Then talking about genetic diseases may arise because of chromosomal aberrations, or they can be under Mendelian disorders like Turner syndrome or sickle cell anemia. Then there are physiological disorders like diabetes, asthma or hypertension. Talking about infectious diseases, as I said earlier, these are those diseases which can be transmitted from person to person, and these diseases are caused by pathogens. Now, what are pathogens? Well, as I just said that infectious diseases are caused by pathogens, we can just reframe our words to say that pathogens are the disease causing organisms. Most parasites are pathogens. Parasites are those organisms which have started living inside the host body and they derive their nutrition from the host body itself. In this process, they also can harm the host body, and when they start harming the host body, we say that these parasites are pathogens. Now, living inside the host body is not an easy task, and these pathogens have come to be variously adapted to survive and multiply inside the host body. Some of their adaptations are like they may have hooks for attachment. Some might have developed strategies to survive the pH of the gut. They show a very high reproductive potential, and they have ability to evade immunological responses of the host. Armed with all such adaptations, the pathogens attack the host body and cause the disease. So, what can be the common characteristics of the pathogens? We have discussed a bit about pathogens, and we will try to enumerate their common characteristics. As I just said, pathogens are those organisms which cause infectious diseases, and they can be transmitted easily from one person to another. How are they transmitted? This transmission can be through air, water, food, direct or indirect contact, or through vectors. Now, the pathogens can be broadly classified into 5 different categories. Out of these, 4 are cellular, that is living, and 1 is acellular. The 4 different categories of pathogens are helminths like tapeworms, then protozoa, fungi and prokaryotes like bacteria. So, all these different types of organisms can be pathogen on humans. Similarly, some viruses can also cause diseases in humans. What happens when pathogen enters the body? Here is a figure that shows what happens when pathogen enters our body. First of all, when the pathogen enters, it starts multiplying and increasing its number. This period is known as the incubation period. At this time, the body does not show any symptoms. It is the time between the infection and the onset of the symptoms. Once the pathogen has multiplied and reached enormous number, its presence starts affecting the body and the symptoms of the disease start appearing. It is the time when we say that illness has occurred, and it is the time when body also starts recognizing the presence of the pathogen and tries to eliminate it by various methods like inflammation. What is inflammation? Inflammation is a process in which, in order to eliminate a pathogen, the body creates many different responses, because of which we can see the redness, swelling or hotness, and even the pain in that particular area. All these strategies are a part of the program to eliminate the pathogen out of the body. But during this time, when the illness is there, the immune response is now not yet fully responded. It is just trying to identify the pathogen and trying to get rid of it, but it is not very effective at this time. The last phase is the decline and recovery phase, where the immune responses are at the peak. Now, by this time, the body or the medical treatment that was given overpowers the pathogen and the growth of the pathogen declines, and now the body starts repairing the damages. Let us try to look at this cycle of events more closely. Suppose I try to draw a graph between time and number of pathogens. When a pathogen gains entry in the body, its numbers are very low, and initially it takes time to grow in number and multiply. During this time, the body has not yet sensed the presence of the pathogen is multiplying freely in the body and the symptoms have not yet appeared. This phase is known as the incubation phase. That was the first phase we talked about. Now, as the number of pathogen keeps on increasing in our body starts showing the symptoms of the disease. The immune responses start somewhere here when the illness has onset, the illness has set in the body and the immune system starts. As the number of pathogen is increasing, the immune responses are also increasing. There comes a time when the pathogen number reaches a peak. By this time, the immune responses have also started and now the number of pathogen starts to decline. Why? Because our immune system is overpowering the growth of the pathogens now. If we try to draw the response of immune system on the same graph, we can show that when the immune response reaches the peak, the pathogen reaches its least level. So, this graph shows the incubation period, the period of illness and the period of decline and recovery. Okay. Moving ahead, let us now discuss some modes of transmission of infectious diseases. This is a picture given in one of the older NCERT books and it shows the various routes by which the infectious diseases can be transmitted from an infected person to a healthy person. It can be through direct contact, which can be physical or sexual, or by the indirect contact when a healthy person comes in contact with the articles used or touched by an infected person. The infectious diseases can also be transmitted through food and water. Contaminated food and water are one of the biggest sources of infection. Then there are some airborne microbes which are present in the droplets exhaled by the infectious person, and when this air is taken in or inhaled by the healthy person, he or she gets sick. Some infectious agents are also transmitted by various carriers like houseflies or vectors like mosquitoes. So, these are the different routes by which infectious diseases are transmitted: by direct contact, by indirect contact, by food and water, by air, or by carriers and vectors. Having said so, we have till now discussed general aspects of being healthy and disease. We have tried to define the disease and the pathogens as well. We have seen some general characteristics of pathogens, the modes of their transmission, and also tried to study a few ways by which we can prevent the onset of infectious diseases. Now, let us study some common diseases in humans. Now, there are some infectious diseases which affect a large part of population in India, and these diseases have been included in your book. But the problem with such detailed study on diseases is that it becomes a bit tough to memorize all the names and terms given under different headings. There are about 7 or 8 diseases that have been discussed in your book, and in order to make their study easy, we will try to categorize these diseases into 5 main categories. So, the diseases that you are going to study can be categorized according to the pathogen that causes these diseases. So, these diseases can be caused by bacteria or by virus. Some diseases can be caused by protozoa or helminths, or some diseases can be fungal. If we categorize the diseases like this in this order, our study will become a bit easier. So, first of all, under the bacterial diseases head, we will study about 2 diseases, typhoid and pneumonia. See, when you develop a habit of tabulating things like that or making flow charts while studying and making your notes, you will find that remembering things and grasping things becomes easier for you in this manner. So, let us study about typhoid. Typhoid is a very dangerous disease and it is caused by the bacteria Salmonella typhi, which is transmitted through contaminated food and water. Now, this disease is very difficult to be fought off by the immune system because this bacteria Salmonella typhi can live inside the host cells. So, the immune system gets puzzled how to kill its own cells. The diagnosis is through the viral test. The viral test is a antigen antibody relation linking test, and it finds out the antibodies present in the blood. The symptoms are onset after 6 to 30 days of exposure, that is, this much is the incubation period of this bacteria inside the body. Major symptoms are fever, rash, weakness, abdominal pain, constipation or headaches. Now, in serious untreated cases, even the bowel can become perforated, and if left untreated, this disease can be fatal also. When we talk about typhoid, a classic case of typhoid Mary also comes to mention. She was Mary Mallon, and she was the first asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever. What is the meaning of asymptomatic carrier? That means the bacteria Salmonella typhi was present inside her body, but since her immune system was so developed that the bacteria kept at such levels that she never actually had the symptoms of the typhoid fever. So, she never actually knew that she is carrying the bacteria of typhoid fever in her body, and she was a cook. So, she whenever she worked as cook, people got affected and infected by typhoid. She was presumed to have infected about 51 people over the course of her career as cook. Eventually, she was confined so that other people can be prevented from getting the disease by coming in contact with her contaminated food preparations. The next disease that we are going to study is pneumonia. Now, pneumonia is a term which is given to the inflammation of alveoli of the lungs, and following this inflammation, the alveoli get filled with the water or fluids. Now, do you know what are alveoli? Alveoli are small balloon shaped structures present inside the lungs. They have very thin walls. Why? Because they serve for the exchange of gases between the lungs and the blood capillaries. Now, they have very thin walls and their function is exchange of gases through diffusion. What would happen if these alveoli get filled with some fluid? What will happen? Well, obviously, their capacity to exchange the gases will dramatically be reduced. This is what that happens in the pneumonia. Now, pneumonia is a disease that can be caused by n number of factors. It can be caused by bacteria, fungi and even viruses. But for our course of study, we will talk about the pneumonia caused by bacteria, Haemophilus influenzae or Streptococcus pneumoniae. I will once again repeat that there are many different pathogens that can cause pneumonia, but here we are talking about Haemophilus influenzae and Streptococcus pneumoniae. As I said that they lead to inflammation of the alveoli and they get filled with the fluid. Mode of transmission is the inhalation of droplets from infected person or by indirect contact, and the common symptoms are cough, fever, shortness of breath, shaking, chills, and because of low supply of oxygen, grey to purplish skin color because the blood is poorly oxygenated. Just I told you why. The diagnosis can be made by the chest X-rays, physical exam, blood test or by the analysis of sputum or bronchoscopy. Now, there are many diseases which can be caused by the bacteria in the humans. Here you can see a list of different diseases. Some of these diseases were lethal in the past, some are still lethal, some can be controlled while others can't, some can be transmitted through sexual intercourse, some can be controlled by vaccination while others are treated by antibiotics. Talking about antibiotics, do you know what are antibiotics? You must all have undergone this experience or might have heard that somebody got ill or sick and the doctor prescribed a few antibiotics and told them to take these antibiotics for a particular given course of time, and these antibiotics get rid of the ailment. So, if you have such experience, you can very well easily say that antibiotics are those chemicals which can kill certain microbes which cause diseases in us. So, let us try to define antibiotics. They are the antimicrobial drugs used in treatment and prevention of bacterial infections. They may either kill or inhibit the growth of the bacteria. You know how antibiotics were discovered? Alexander Fleming was working in his laboratory and he saw that in the cultures where penicillium was growing, the bacteria could not grow. So, he observed that something must be there which is being produced by the penicillium fungi and it is not allowing the other bacteria to grow. Later on, it was these substances that were not allowing the bacteria to grow were identified as antibiotics, and antibiotics have revolutionized the way we treat different diseases. Along with vaccination and antibiotics, now we can control many different diseases which were not under control in the past. But one thing to remember is that antibiotics are not effective against viruses. We cannot use antibiotics to kill viruses. Do you know why? Well, I just told you that antibiotics kill or inhibit the growth of bacteria. How? They may tear their cell wall or digest them and impair their machinery for reproduction. But viruses, they use our cellular machinery for their reproduction, for their protein synthesis. So, how can antibiotics kill the viruses? They are not at all effective against viruses. There is a question on the effectiveness and the proper use of antibiotics. It is being thought whether antibiotics are boon or bane. There are some side effects of using antibiotics, but most side effects are not very serious, though rarely some may cause allergies, severe allergies. The problem with the antibiotics is that they can kill off the normal defense bacteria of our body. In different parts of our body, a lot of different microbes and bacteria are living, and they are living in symbiotic associations. They help us in many ways. For example, the gut bacteria that is present in the gut, it produces vitamin B12 also. Now, these bacteria are beneficial for us because they also do not allow other pathogens to come and live inside our body. Why? Because they offer severe competition. Think about a metro coach or a bus fully occupied by the people. Will other people be able to enter that bus or the coach? No, because it is already overpopulated by the people inside the coach. Similar situation happens that there are normal symbiotic bacteria growing inside our body, inside our gut, and they do not allow other invading pathogens to come and grow inside our body. But when we take antibiotics without proper prescription, without proper knowledge, what we are doing? We are also killing that beneficial bacteria which was up till now protecting us. Now that we have killed that bacteria, the metro coach or the bus that we were talking about as analogy has got free. Now, any pathogen can enter our body and infect us. So, antibiotics can kill off normal defense bacteria, and this may then allow thrush or other bad bacteria or fungi to grow. Another bad thing that happens when you take antibiotics without proper consultation is the development of antibiotic resistant bacteria. How does this happen? Does antibiotics confer resistance to the bacteria? How can they do so? We are saying that antibiotics kill the bacteria. How can they make them resistant? Well, the answer lies in the proper understanding of evolution. Let us say that there are some bacteria inside our body and they are harming us. Now, we know that all these bacteria can be genetically dissimilar. So, a few of them might be carrying an antibiotic resistant gene. I am showing an antibiotic resistant gene with this orange color. Okay? Antibiotic resistance gene. Okay. So, let us see once again. There were certain bacteria growing inside our body and infecting us, causing some disease, and a few of them might be carrying an antibiotic resistance gene. Now, you happen to take an antibiotic. What will happen? All the bacteria that did not have antibiotic resistance gene will die sooner or later, but the one carrying the antibiotic resistance gene will survive. Now, what has happened here? The competition has eliminated. It has become the lone survivor. It has now all the resources for itself. What will happen? It will now reproduce, grow and multiply in number very quickly because it has now got ample resources for itself, and soon we will have a population of bacteria which all have one or the other antibiotic resistance gene. And now, if we take the same antibiotic again for the same infection, will it be effective? No. Why? Because now all these bacteria are carrying the antibiotic resistant gene. This is how antibiotic resistance develops in the different strains of bacteria, and this is why we say that antibiotics should never be overconsumed or should be consumed only under proper prescription from the doctors. Otherwise, the antibiotic resistant bacteria can develop very quickly. Talking about the antibiotic resistance, just as the way I have taught you now, methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus bacteria has developed, and this bacteria is very difficult to control. If any bacteria develops antibiotic resistance, how will we control it? How will we treat the disease that is caused by such bacteria? it becomes very difficult. So, what you can do? How can you help to control this antibiotic resistance? Well, always take care of these points when you are taking the antibiotics. Always take them in the correct way and never take the antibiotics without prescription. Never take antibiotics prescribed from somewhere else. Why? Because the bacteria affecting you and the bacteria that was affecting the other person might be different. So, never exchange the antibiotics or never take the antibiotics without any prescription. Also, never skip doses and always take the entire course of antibiotics as directed by your doctor. Now, what may happen? You took antibiotics for a certain period of time and you started feeling well. The symptoms started fading away and you feel now you are good to go. But the bacteria is not properly killed. Its population might have reduced, but it might not be totally eliminated from the system. And if you stop taking the antibiotic now, chances are that the leftover bacteria will develop fast and it might develop an antibiotic resistance also. Always discard the leftover medicine, and the best way is to get vaccinated. If vaccines are available, get yourself vaccinated so that you do not have to rely on the antibiotics for your treatments. And last but not the least, never take an antibiotic for a viral infection, because the viruses cannot be killed by the antibiotic, and the antibiotic which will enter your body when you have taken it for a viral infection, what will it do? It will go harm the beneficial bacteria or help in production of antibiotic resistant bacteria. So, never take antibiotics for any viral infection. This is all about antibiotics, and now let us proceed towards the viral infections. Under viral infections, we will discuss the common cold. Common cold is one of the most common disease that infects almost all of us throughout our lives. It is caused by pathogens, and the problem is that there are more than 200 different types of pathogens, viruses which can cause common cold, and rhinovirus is the most prevalent of them. Other viruses that cause common cold are coronavirus, adenovirus, respiratory syncytial virus or parainfluenza virus. Now, our immune response is not very effective against common cold. Why? Because new cold viruses constantly develop and the body never builds up resistance against all of them. Okay? The symptoms, you all know the symptoms of common cold: nasal stuffiness, scratchy throat, sneezing, hoarseness, cough, watery eyes, etc. All these are the symptoms of the common cold. How can the cold be transmitted? Well, it can be transmitted through airborne droplets. When you inhale the droplets of a person who is sneezing or coughing, or touching the viral infected surfaces. Actually, the problem is, the first thing, that direct contact with the secretions can also cause the disease, and the cold virus can also live on the objects for several hours and can thus be acquired from contact with these objects. If you touch a thing that has previously been touched by a person who had flu or common cold, chances are that the virus which was still living on that surface will be taken up by you also, and you can also get the flu. Inhaling the airborne viruses after individuals sneeze or cough, I have shown it through this figure, this can also lead to transmission of the common cold virus. Now, people often confuse influenza with cold. Influenza is caused by the influenza virus and common cold is generally caused by the rhinovirus. These two have altogether different shapes. The symptoms of influenza and common cold may be similar, but influenza is a severe illness while the common cold is somewhat milder. How can common cold be prevented? This is one of the diseases that can easily be prevented if we take care of our habits and our personal hygiene. If you use tissue every time you sneeze and cough and throw this tissue in the waste bins, chances are that you will reduce the chances of spread of the flu. Wash your hands with soap and water regularly or use alcohol based sanitizers. If you are sick, if you have flu like symptoms, visit your doctor, do not touch your eyes or nose, and please stay at home confined in isolation so that you do not spread the flu to others also. And if you meet somebody who has flu, then try to avoid direct contact with that person as much as possible. This is how the common cold can be prevented. Let us now move on to the protozoan diseases. One of the scariest protozoan diseases is the malaria, and the other one is amoebic dysentery or the amoebiasis. Malaria, do you know what are the causes of malaria? Malaria is caused by the pathogen Plasmodium. Many species of Plasmodium are known, and falciparum is the most dangerous one. The malaria caused by this species can sometimes be fatal also. Here there is a picture of blood smear showing malarial pathogen growing inside the RBCs. This pathogen is spread by the vector female Anopheles mosquito. Before going into the details of the question, I have one question for you. If a mosquito bites you someday, can you just by looking at it from the far off, can you tell whether it is male mosquito or female mosquito? Can you tell that? Will you be able to answer just by having one simple look at the morphology of that particular mosquito? Can you tell whether it is male mosquito or female? Well, yes, you can, because mostly you are bitten by the female mosquitoes, which require the human blood meal for the development of their eggs. The male mosquitoes take food from the plant sap generally. So, talking about the Anopheles mosquito, 30 to 40 species of Anopheles mosquito can transmit Plasmodium. The female lays about 30 to 150 eggs every 2-3 days, and the human blood is needed to nourish these eggs only. Now, the particular feature of this mosquito is that they start biting by late evening, and the peak of the biting activity is at midnight and early hours of the morning. Why is this information important? Because if you know these patterns, you can avoid being bitten by this mosquito. Let us now discuss the life cycle of the Plasmodium. The Plasmodium requires 2 hosts for completing its life cycle. Let us begin with the infectious form, the sporozoid. The sporozoids are present inside the mosquito. This diagram has been taken from your NCERT books. You can see this diagram there also. So, when the mosquito bites a healthy person, the sporozoids enter his blood through the bite of the mosquito, and then these sporozoids reach the liver. Here they reproduce inside the liver and grow in number, and finally they come out and attack our RBCs. Now they grow and multiply inside RBCs also, and when they burst open, they release a toxin known as hemozoin. This hemozoin toxin is responsible for production of chills and fevers that are characteristic symptoms of the malaria. When the parasite is inside the RBCs only, it develops its sexual stages, which are now known as gametocytes. So, there are male and female stages formed. They travel inside the blood in these forms only. Now, if another mosquito happens to bite this person, what will happen? These sexual stages will be taken up by the mosquito along with the blood meal. Once the sexual stages or the gametocytes reach the intestine of the mosquito, fertilization takes place there, and again sporozoites are formed. These sporozoites move to the salivary gland of the mosquito and stay there. so that whenever this mosquito bites another healthy person, these sporozoites can be transmitted through the bite into that healthy person. So, the points to remember here are that the sporozoite is the infectious form, gametocyte is the sexual stage, and fertilization takes place inside the mosquito's intestine, and sporozoites are stored in the salivary glands of the mosquito. The symptoms of the malaria are very characteristic, and it infects almost all of the body, it affects almost all of the body. And here is a picture, a diagrammatic view of RBCs which carry the plasmodium. How can you prevent being bitten from the mosquito? There are two methods. You have to look for preventing the bite when you are inside the house, and when you are outside the house you have to look for the ways by which you can prevent the breeding of the vector, that is you control the vector population. So, let us first see what we can do in our houses. Remember, I told you that the mosquito starts biting late evening, and the biting activity is at the peak during midnight. So, what can we do inside our homes? When we sleep, we use mosquito nets or we use insect repellents. However useful or harmful they are, that is a matter or topic of debate, but to some extent they do protect us from the mosquito bites. Most effective will be to keep the windows closed, especially during the evening hours. If we do these things, we can prevent the bite inside our house. Talking about outside, we can do many things to control the vector population. We can do fumigation, or we can spray various chemicals on the stagnant water, chemicals like petrol or kerosene oil, so that the mosquito larvae do not get proper oxygen and they die. And one of the biocontrol methods which is very effective is release of gambusia fish in the stagnant water bodies. These gambusia fish are very small and they feed specifically on the mosquito larvae. So, if there are large bodies of stagnant water, standing water, these fish can be introduced in those water bodies and they will eat off the mosquito larvae, and ultimately the vector population will decline. This is how we can control the vector of mosquitoes, we can control the mosquitoes. The next disease that we are talking about is amoebiasis. It is caused by Entamoeba histolica. This pathogen is carried by houseflies from places to places. What happens that the parasite lives in the intestine and it is passed on the outside with the fecal matter. When the housefly sits on the fecal matter and then later it sits on the food or water that you are going to consume, the parasite or the pathogen will gain an entry inside your body also. So, contaminated food and water are the main sources of infection, and the symptoms are constipation, pain, cramps, stool with excess mucus and blood clots. How can you prevent this disease? By ensuring that you do not consume food and water that has been contaminated. How can you do so? Well, you can keep your food items covered so that the housefly do not get to sit on it, and avoid eating cut fruits and salads and different food preparations from the vendors who do not keep their food items covered. And also you should try to avoid the entrance of houseflies in your homes also by keeping the surroundings clean. It does not mean that you just clean your home and throw the garbage outside next to your home on the streets. This will not control the houseflies. They will come and sit on the garbage and then come back to your house and spread the diseases. Next topic is the diseases caused by helminths. Here we will discuss Ascariasis and Filariasis. Ascariasis is caused by the roundworms. Here is a picture of roundworms. This is the male roundworm, which is smaller as compared to the female roundworm, and here you can see the characteristic curve of the tail. This helps us to identify the male from the female. They live in the intestine and their eggs are excreted along with the fecal matter. So, here also the infection is acquired through contaminated food and water. The symptoms are internal bleeding, muscular pain, blockage of intestinal passage, fever and anemia. This is a very dangerous disease and it harms a lot of people, especially children, and it can be prevented only by using simple methods like habit of washing hands every time before you take meal, like by inculcating the habit of keeping the food items covered. And these diseases can also be treated by tablets which are available in the pharmacies at very low cost. The only thing required is proper awareness and inculcation of good habits which pertain to good personal hygiene and social hygiene as well. The next disease is filariasis. It is caused by the pathogen Wuchereria bancrofti and Wuchereria malai. This is a microscopic pathogen and it is carried by the vector female mosquitoes like Culex and Anopheles, and this lives in the lymphatic vessels of our body. And the symptoms of this disease range from simple pain and discomfort to elephantiasis. The symptoms of elephantiasis are severe deformity of lower body, limbs and even genitalia. The skin may become thicker and may cause the pain also. The last disease that we are going to study is a fungal disease, that is a ringworm. Ringworm can be caused by a variety of fungi like Microsporum, Trichophyton or Epidermophyton, and it is generally acquired from soil but can also be transmitted by use of articles of the infected person. The symptoms are presence of dry scaly lesions and intense itching, and they generally occur in skin folds, groin, toes, and they also can occur on nails and scalp. So, this was all about the various diseases which are very common amongst the Indian population, and a thorough awareness is required to prevent these diseases. I hope that today's session has helped you to understand the basic logic behind the spread of infections, and you can understand how important is the inculcation of good habits, proper maintenance of proper personal hygiene and social hygiene is important for prevention of various diseases. So, I have brought some questions for you to think over, like what are the various adaptations of pathogens that help them to survive in the host body. You remember we discussed some adaptations in the beginning of the session. Please try to list them. The second question that you should look for answer is, what are the common modes of transmission of pathogen? Next, how can vector-borne infections be controlled? Fourth question that you should try to find out the answer is, how important is the maintenance of personal and social hygiene for prevention of diseases? Lastly, our habits can save us from many diseases. Please try to justify this statement with examples. Thank you.